You made it through day 21, maybe further, and somewhere between the clarity and the quiet, a question keeps surfacing that nobody wants to admit out loud. Not because it's wrong to ask it, but because asking it makes you feel like you haven't moved on as much as you thought. What is happening inside them right now? Not what you hope is happening. Not what revenge fantasies construct at 2 a.m. What is actually, neurologically, psychologically, happening inside the brain of an avoidant person during the silence you've created? Because here's what the research shows, and almost no one in this space is willing to say it plainly. Avoidants are not unbothered. They are not indifferent. They are not thinking about someone else. They are overwhelmed. And their brain is handling it in a way that looks, from the outside, exactly like not caring. Today, we're going to go inside that brain, not to give you hope and not to take it away, but because understanding what is actually happening on the other side of your silence may be the final piece of the psychological puzzle you've been missing. Chapter 1. Before we talk about what happens during no contact, we need to be precise about what avoidant attachment actually is, because the pop psychology version of this concept has become so distorted that most people are applying it to the wrong person entirely. Attachment theory was developed in the 1950s and 1960s by British psychiatrist John Bowlby and later expanded by psychologist Mary Ainsworth through her landmark Strange Situation Studies in 1978. What they discovered was this: the way a child's earliest caregivers respond to their emotional needs creates a template, a neurological blueprint for how that person will approach closeness, vulnerability, and relationships for the rest of their life. Avoidant attachment, what researchers now call dismissive avoidant in adults, develops in children whose emotional needs were consistently met with dismissal, distraction, or emotional unavailability. Not necessarily abuse, not necessarily neglect in the obvious sense. Often it's something subtler. A parent who was physically present but emotionally distant. A household where vulnerability was treated as weakness. A childhood in which the safest strategy was to need less. The child's brain adapts. It learns. Closeness leads to disappointment. Emotional dependence leads to pain. The safest position is self-sufficiency. And here is the critical thing that most people miss. This is not a choice. It is a neurological adaptation that happened before the person had language to describe it. Neuroscientist James Cone at the University of Virginia has studied what he calls social baseline theory, the idea that the human brain evolved to treat close relationships as a fundamental resource, like food or shelter. For most people, closeness regulates the nervous system. It reduces threat response. It costs less neurological energy to be connected than to be alone. For the avoidant brain, this system is inverted. Closeness, emotional intimacy, vulnerability, the felt sense of being needed, registers as a threat. The nervous system doesn't calm down in connection, it activates, which means that when an avoidant person withdraws during no contact, when they go silent, when they seem indifferent, when they post normally on social media as if nothing happened, they are not performing. They are regulating. The distance is not cruelty. It is their nervous system doing the only thing it knows how to do to feel safe. Chapter 2. The first 2 weeks. What the avoidant brain is actually doing. During the first 2 weeks of no contact, from the avoidant's perspective, something counterintuitive happens. They feel relief. Not because they don't care about you, but because the chronic low-level anxiety that closeness produces in the avoidant nervous system has temporarily lifted. The hypervigilance, the constant monitoring of emotional demands, of whether they're giving enough, of whether they're about to disappoint you, has paused. Psychologist and attachment researcher Phillip Shaver at UC Davis found that avoidant individuals consistently show deactivating strategies when faced with relationship stress, mental and behavioral techniques that suppress attachment needs and reduce emotional engagement. These strategies aren't conscious manipulation. They are automatic, reflexive, the brain's learned response to the threat of intimacy. So in the first 2 weeks, the avoidant brain is doing what it has always done when closeness becomes overwhelming. It deactivates. They fill the space. They get busy. They exercise. They reorganize. They see friends. They tell themselves this was the right decision, or that you'll work it out, or that they needed space anyway. And this is the part that survivors of avoidant relationships find most difficult to accept. In those first 2 weeks, most of this is genuine. They do feel lighter. The relief is real. But underneath it, something else is beginning. Psychologist Mario Mikulincer at Bar-Ilan University published research showing that avoidant individuals, despite their deactivating strategies, still possess the same fundamental attachment needs as everyone else. The needs are not absent. They are suppressed. And suppression requires effort. Sustained, unconscious, neurological effort. The avoidant brain is not indifferent. It is working very hard to appear indifferent. And that effort has a cost. Chapter 3. Weeks 3 and 4. The suppression starts to crack. By the 3rd and 4th week of no contact, the suppression system begins to show strain. This is the stage that almost no one in this space describes accurately, because from the outside, the avoidant still looks fine. They are still posting, still socializing, still appearing unmoved. But internally, something has shifted. The brain's default mode network, the system responsible for self-referential thought, memory retrieval, and the mental simulation of social relationships, does not stop processing a lost attachment just because the person has chosen not to think about it. Research by neurologist Marcus Aurelius at Washington University, who first characterized the default mode network, found that this system is most active not when we're focused on a task, but when we're at rest, when the mind wanders. For the avoidant person who is keeping themselves busy, constantly engaged, strategically not thinking, the default mode network is waiting. It activates in the car, in the shower, in the 3 minutes between putting down their phone and falling asleep. And what does it do during those moments? It replays. It simulates. It asks questions that the avoidant brain has been trained to dismiss as weakness. What are they doing right now? Did I make a mistake? Why haven't they reached out? Because here is what the avoidant brain did not expect. You didn't reach out. Attachment researcher Stan Tatkin, author of Wired for Love, describes what he calls the protest-despair cycle in avoidant individuals. When an avoidant withdraws and the anxious or secure partner chases, which is the expected pattern, the avoidant system is confirmed. Closeness equals entrapment. Distance equals power. They can afford to be distant because the other person will always close the gap. When the other person stops closing the gap, when no contact is maintained, the avoidant's entire psychological model is disrupted. The system that promised safety through distance is suddenly not delivering safety because the distance is permanent, or could be. And the avoidant brain, for all its suppression capacity, was not built to process permanent loss any better than anyone else's brain. The deactivation begins to fail. Chapter 4. The Stoic Trap. Why avoidants are often misidentified as Stoics. There is a confusion in this niche that needs to be named directly. Avoidant attachment is frequently misidentified as Stoicism by the avoidant person themselves and by the people who loved them. The detachment, the self-sufficiency, the apparent unbothered quality, the ability to go silent and seem completely composed while everyone around them is struggling. These traits look, on the surface, like what Marcus Aurelius described when he wrote about equanimity and emotional mastery. They are not the same thing. The Stoic tradition, from Zeno of Citium through Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius, was not a philosophy of emotional suppression. It was a philosophy of emotional clarity, of feeling fully, and choosing a response grounded in reason rather than reaction. Epictetus, who knew more about emotional suffering than almost any philosopher who lived. He was born into slavery. He was tortured. He lost everything a person can lose. Wrote this: "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. The crucial word is react, not suppress, not avoid, not disconnect." The Stoic ideal was a person who could sit with grief, with loss, with love, fully, without performance, and choose their response. The avoidant strategy is the opposite, a person who cannot sit with these things at all, and so has built an architecture of distraction and distance to never have to. The difference matters because it changes how you interpret the silence. An avoidant going quiet during no contact is not practicing Stoic detachment. They are executing a survival strategy that was installed before they were old enough to choose it. Understanding this does not excuse the hurt they caused, but it prevents you from building a narrative in which their silence means they are fine, or worse, stronger than you, when the neuroscience tells us they are simply suppressing something they have not yet learned to feel. Chapter 5. Day 30 and beyond. What actually makes an avoidant reach out? By day 30 of sustained no contact, and the word sustain matters here, because any break in the contact resets every process we've described, the avoidant brain has reached a threshold. The deactivation strategies are depleted. The default mode network has been running simulations for weeks, and the fundamental human attachment system, which was never absent, only suppressed, is beginning to assert itself. Research by Kim Bartholomew and Leonard Horowitz, who developed the four-category model of adult attachment, found that even dismissive avoidant individuals show elevated physiological stress responses when facing genuine relationship loss. Not the same as anxious attachment, but measurable, real, biological. What this looks like practically: the avoidant person begins to experience something they cannot easily name, a flatness, a low-grade restlessness that exercise and busyness no longer fully resolve, a sense that something is missing that they had dismissed as dependency but is now presenting as absence. This is not weakness finally breaking through. This is the human attachment system doing what it was designed to do, signaling that a significant bond has been severed and that the organism should respond. But here is what matters for you to understand. If you are the person who initiated no contact, what makes an avoidant reach out is not longing in the way you experience longing. It is dissonance, the gap between what their system expected, that you would eventually close the distance, that they could return when they were ready, and the reality that you haven't, that you may not. The philosopher Seneca wrote in his letters, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." He was writing about anxiety and anticipation, but it applies precisely here. The avoidant person does not reach out because they miss you in the present tense. They reach out because their imagination has finally allowed them to simulate losing you permanently, and that simulation is more painful than the vulnerability of contact. This is why the advice to just wait long enough and they'll come back is simultaneously true and useless. Because the question was never whether they would reach out. The question is who you will be when they do, and whether that version of you still wants to answer. Chapter 6. What you do with this information. Understanding the avoidant brain during no contact is not a roadmap for getting them back. It is a map for understanding what you were navigating, what you survived, and why it cost you as much as it did. You were not imagining the connection. The neuroscience of avoidant attachment confirms that avoidants form genuine bonds. They simply cannot regulate the anxiety those bonds produce without distance. You were real to them. The relationship was real. The pain of its absence on their side is real. And you were also asking someone whose nervous system had been wired before they were old enough to make choices, to do something that felt biologically dangerous to them. That doesn't make their behavior acceptable, but it makes it comprehensible. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself in the privacy of his journal during the years when he governed the largest empire in the world while watching people he loved die around him. This: whenever you are about to find fault with someone, ask yourself the following question: what fault of mine most nearly resembles the one I am about to criticize? He was not asking for weakness. He was asking for precision, for the kind of honest self-examination that replaces blame with understanding. Not because understanding is more comfortable, but because it is more true. You do not have to forgive an avoidant to understand them. You do not have to want them back to have compassion for what shaped them. What you do have to do, what neuroscience and philosophy agree on, in the language of two entirely different centuries, is stop making their emotional limitation mean something about your worth. Their brain's response to intimacy is not a verdict on you. It is a record of what happened to them before you ever arrived. If you are watching this after video 1, after the no contact timeline, after day 21, you already know what is happening in your brain. Now you know what is happening in theirs. Neither piece of information tells you what to decide. They were not designed to. That is not what neuroscience or philosophy does for you. What they do is give you the clearest possible picture of reality, so that whatever you decide next, you decide it with your eyes open, not with hope that distorts, not with anger that blinds, with understanding. That, as Marcus Aurelius would tell you, is the only foundation worth building anything on.